Good question. In certain cases, this broad American philosophy of letting the market decide is right, is very powerful. In this case, we've had an extreme shock to the system. The financial crisis, the economic crisis that erupted last September, brought to you by Wall Street primarily and by the mortgage lenders, that crisis was so extreme, so dire, that I think in those circumstances, within the keeping of the American philosophy of how markets work, that it's entirely appropriate that the federal government extend loans, not give money, but extend loans to help major players in our economy survive until such time as the economy improves. I think there's a legitimate role for that. I think that there's a very fine balance here, extremely fine balance. The federal government ought to play that role, but the federal government ought not be involved in managing General Motors or managing the auto industry. They're now remaking the entire board of directors of General Motors. They are, so there's a team of people from the federal government camped out in the Renaissance Center in downtown Detroit telling GM management what to do. There's a strong temptation within the Obama administration and Congress to use General Motors as a vehicle, no pun intended, to introduce more environmentally friendly vehicles, and even though we don't know that the American people will actually pay money for them. So there's a danger here that the government will overplay its hand. I mean, a profound danger. I mean, I think they are in the process of overplaying their hand. So the difference between steel is that the auto industry sits at the top of a pyramid of suppliers that touches the whole economy. It touches rubber and steel and semiconductors and across the board, you name it. If it's a product that's manufactured, the auto industry is at the top of a very deep and powerful pyramid of suppliers. So I can justify this decision that the Obama administration made, that well, I guess the Bush administration made it the first time, Obama then came in. So I think we can justify this on a short-term basis, lend money, expect a rate of return on these loans. This is not giving money, but in the final analysis, I think the Obama administration needs to have a sense of humility and a sense of realism about the complexity of making decisions in a major industrial corporation, and they should recognize that the government ain't that smart. The government can't do it. And so, so this is, there's a rich, I mean, we'll be arguing this point for years. Books will be written about this subject alone. This will be argued in business schools for years, but that's my short answer to your question.
Mr. Holstein, on several occasions today, you spoke about the dire consequences to the American economy if the automobile industry should fail. But my basic question is, what do you think is the opportunity, or what do you think the reality is of the American automobile industry being able to survive, even with bankruptcy and with federal infusion of funds? And I'm concerned particularly about the fact that Toyota, which is considered the real, maybe the Cadillac or the Rolls-Royce of the automobile industry, with all of its innovations, small automobiles, of energy-efficient automobiles, and being way ahead of the curve, just this last week reported a monumental loss of billions of dollars, and reported that they anticipate further losses of billions of dollars. Under those circumstances, do you think that the automobile industry to be successful in this country will require a continuous infusion of federal funds?
Well, there's 3 or 4 questions embedded in that. First of all, Toyota is not an American automaker. I have this debate with Toyota. They get up in front of an audience and say, well, we're an American automobile company. I'm sorry, pal. Your headquarters, last I checked, is in Tokyo, in Toyota City. Look at your board of directors, all Japanese guys in their late 50s in dark blue suits. No Americans at the top levels of your company. You're making, the profits all go to Japan. You don't buy American technology, you buy Japanese technology. You are a Japanese enterprise that has Americanized yourself to a very large extent. 8 factories or plans for factories, major investment in this country, but in the final analysis, they're not an American company. So let's make a distinction between the domestic owned, we don't call them the big three anymore, we call them domestic three versus the others. I don't think Chrysler can survive. I think Chrysler is going to be either absorbed into some sort of fiat marriage or allowed to liquidate. I think General Motors has the products. It could survive with government help. I think General Motors can survive. I think Ford has made a very smart financial decision to borrow $23 billion in the year 2006. The most important decision Ford had made since Henry Ford was to borrow money in 2006 at the height of the financial markets. Ford is behind General Motors in terms of their product display, product portfolio. They basically have been a truck and Mustang company in recent years. Now they have the Ford Fusion, the Ford Focus, and they're doing a good job. They're getting some other products in. They're getting the Taurus back. So I think Ford can survive. However, if sales remain at 8.5 or 9 million, then Ford, it will be knocking on the federal government's door by Christmas. So, but I think that the answer is yes, Ford and GM can survive. The argument I hear a lot is, what difference does it make whether we have a domestic-owned auto industry or not? Why don't we just let Toyota take over our American auto industry? And this view that you express that they're somehow the Cadillac or the defining parameter that they are pro-American, that they are somehow have our interests at heart in a way that the domestic-owned guys don't have, I reject that. Toyota is, they are charging in the heart of the pickup market. They are not the environmental champion that many people portray them as. They are a Japanese entity trying to make money, and they want to repatriate the money back to Japan. They are not an American company. It is not a viable option, in my view, to simply say, let Toyota take over the so-called American auto industry.
Mr. Holstein, what do you think is or was the best way to handle this situation for the good of America, both in the beginning and now? I mean, what should have happened better than what's happening now?
And one other thought occurs, the fact that Toyota is losing money is very important. If General Motors were losing money by themselves, if they were in this situation by themselves and Toyota was making money hand over fist, then you could say, well, there had been a failure of management at General Motors. These guys failed. These other guys at Toyota got it right. That's not what's happening. Everybody's losing money in this market. And so I regard what's happened at Toyota as being evidence that supports my view that General Motors is not a, quote, failure of leadership primarily. The primary thing of what went wrong was an economic collapse. Now, to respond to your question about what is the right way, the right way is for the Obama administration to continue lending some money to GM for a finite period of time, not forever, and keep their hands off of the levers of power inside the company. I think that they have some very positive things about what they've done in terms of telling GM, we want you to get ready to be competitive at this point in the market, 10 million or 11 million units. GM, it's painful to say, but GM held on to too many brands. They held on to too many dealerships. They held on to too many factories. Now, we, the American people, not just the Obama administration, are saying to them, we want you to rig yourself, to gear yourself to be competitive at this level. The most recent plan that Fritz Henderson announced will go a tremendous distance to do that. He's embraced doing things that General Motors has resisted for at least 10 years. So I think if we get out of the way, the federal government lends them some money, gives them some advice in the backdrop, but fundamentally gets out of the way, removes the threat of bankruptcy. The Obama administration may be trying to save General Motors, but this threat of bankruptcy is killing them. The threat of bankruptcy is destroying confidence. That should be taken off the table. Obama should give a speech tomorrow saying, we have decided that General Motors is so important to the American economy that we have decided that we're changing course,